Welcome to ALP Development Day. It's September 9th, hard to believe. I'm coming to you from frozen Colorado where it's about 30 degrees and there's snow on the ground. It's very exciting. My name is Annie Buck. I am here from Acorn Internet Services. I'm the Education Manager for Acorn, and I'm joined by Pam Prentice, who is our Market Watch Manager. And Pam is going to be here to give her input as well as answer questions that you guys might have. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will love to answer your questions. Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Is all Google traffic created equal? Our agenda for today is all Google traffic created equal? Where does most Google traffic come from? This is the surprising information that we've got to share with you today. And what kind of potential guest is coming to you from these different sources? So we often hear, all I need is a good website. Innkeepers, not all, but some innkeepers believe that a website is all they need to market their business. They don't have to do anything further than setting up a really well designed, responsive website that's fast and works great on the internet. But we are going to show you today that through data that we've been tracking for a few years, that your website is not enough in today's marketing arena. So if you check your analytics at all, you will see that Google has been the #1 referrer of traffic for years. It's between Google My Business, which is the Google Travel local arena, and Google Organic. They're almost always going to be at least the #1 referrer, if not the #1 and #3 referrer for all ends. Occasionally, for a time, we will see some people have another referrer jump up ahead of Google, but historically, it's going to be Google. But within Google, as you know, there are a lot of different ways that potential guests can find you. So at the top of the page, bottom of the page, sometimes on the second page and third page, even depending on your competition area, you'll see Google Ads. Under that, you'll see Google Travel, which is also known as Google Local, or the 4-pack, or the Local Pack. It's where you've got that list of ins with the pictures and the information and the OTA feed. And then you've got your knowledge panel, which is all about you, all about your business. And then you've got Google Organic, which is also about your website and the information that you are giving to Google. So how you show up in each of those is determined by a variety of factors. And these factors are different for each avenue. So it's important to know what factors impact each category there so that you can make updates in the right places to impact change and bring people to your website and to your business. So first we're going to look at an ad. This is a Google ad. To show this, obviously, you have to be running an ads campaign. This can be do it yourself. It can be done for you by an agency, or Google can also help you do this depending on, how you are setting it up. Lots and lots of innkeepers do this for themselves. They set up Google Ads. There are a couple different ways to do that, but this is the very top of a Google page on a Google search. So if you search something like, Colorado Springs Bed and Breakfast in this case, or Colorado Springs Hotel, this is going to be at the top of the page. Next, you're going to see your travel, Google Travel, or Google, Local Pack. This is where you're going to see your different listings with photos. You've got the money over here for the from the OTAs that are coming in. You've got a map. You've got different ways that these can be sort of whittled down by ratings, budget, luxury, and your date range and how many people are staying with you. So it's a very easy way for somebody to come in and pull down information about ins and compare them easily. And these listings are not, despite what many people think, generated from your website. These are pulled in from many other existing sources. Those can be different directories. They can be information, of course, that you've given to Google through Google My Business. It can come in from your OTAs. All kinds of different sources contribute to this information. And a listing may or may not exist for your business. So depending on whether or not you have set up your Google My Business account and verified it and built up all that information, and whether you're using some kind of feed to give information to Google about your availability and pricing, that's how we see those Google travel listings. Now, the next part of Google Local is the knowledge panel. This is going to come up again based on existing business listings from other sources. So this is not necessarily information that comes in from your website at all. This is also from the information that you input into Google through Google My Business. And also, as you can see here, information is coming in on this listing from Priceline with pricing for the different options here, 2, 3, 4 guests for those dates. And it gives information about the business. You can look at photos, you can look at the map, and this is when you see outside. This listing comes up, so if I were to go search for 1896 O'Malley House in Google, this is the listing that will come up on the right-hand side of the page with all the information about the business. Again, you may not have a listing for your business based on the knowledge panel if you don't have a lot of directory listings, if you don't have, a presence on the internet. So for instance, if you're a new business, it's unlikely that you would immediately show up with a knowledge panel. Again, very critical that you have claimed and verified your Google My Business listing if it already exists. And if it doesn't exist, you need to go set it up in Google My Business. Now, here's our local travel and knowledge panel combined sort of information. Again, I know I keep reiterating this, but we have seen, even after years and years of talking about Google My Business, that innkeepers have not claimed and verified their listings. They don't have it set up. They don't have it filled out. They haven't added photos. Excuse me, they haven't verified it. And for new innkeepers especially, this is so important, and it's something that you might not know if you hadn't been dealing with a brick and mortar local business prior to becoming an innkeeper. And again, your visibility is impacted by various things. One extremely important thing is NAP. That stands for name, address, phone. And then there's also a little plus W, which stands for website. So NAP plus W. It is imperative that your name, address, phone, and website information be consistent everywhere on the internet. So that starts at your own website, your Google My Business listing, TripAdvisor, any directory at all that you're involved in, if you're state, local associations, any kind of paid directory that you're involved with, Yelp, anywhere. Facebook is very important. If you have a Facebook page, make sure your information is consistent. That means you don't have 2 or 3 different iterations of your name floating around the internet. For example, we had looked at 1896 O'Malley House. It needs to be 1896 O'Malley House everywhere, not O'Malley House Bed and Breakfast, O'Malley House Inn, O'Malley House of New Orleans, 1896 O'Malley. You get the idea. Everything must be consistent. This is the way that Google identifies who you are throughout the internet so they can pull information into your business. You don't want to risk losing any ability to sort of boost your ranking with the correct information. And having incorrect information can also cause you just to have wrong information in your Google logo listing or your knowledge panel. For example, say somewhere is listed with you having a different address. Well, either Google's not going to recognize that that's you, or your listing could get messed up because Google says, oh, well, this must be the right address. This is an authoritative site. They have the information about this business. We're just going to slap this wrong address on this listing. So NAP is super important. Reviews, especially Google native reviews, meaning Google reviews where people have actually gone into Google and left information about your business, but also reviews from other sources like OTAs. We used to see TripAdvisor reviews included in the Google reviews in Google Local, and we're not seeing that now, which is interesting. But Google reviews are super, super important, but also reviews from other sources like OTAs. And, you know, maybe at some point we'll see TripAdvisor back in there. Google changes all the time. As you guys know, if you look at what Google looked like back in, say, 2008, 2009, compared to what it looks like now, it's completely different. So they are constantly changing, they are constantly evolving and giving us all kinds of different changes. So we want to make sure everything's good everywhere so that we affect our listings properly. A huge important thing with Google Travel or Local is your availability through OTAs or Google Hotel ads. If you're not using any kind of OTA or hotel ad, it is likely that you will not show up in a 4-pack, especially if you're in a competitive area. If you're the only game in town, you know, you're going to show up. Somebody's going to search for, small town USA, Wisconsin, bed and breakfast, and your knowledge panel will show up and you'll be the only listing there. That's great. In that case, you know, you're not competing with anybody. But if you're in a place like Asheville, Santa Fe, New Orleans, you really have to be using something to be shown through OTAs or Google Hotel ads just to be able to be seen. And that's where this dollar amount comes in. It is from a feed, either OTA or hotel ads. And you're going to see this number coming in along with date availability. All right. Let's see here. Sounds like is somebody trying to ask a question, or maybe not. Okay. So another thing that affects where you are showing up in Google Local Travel Channel Knowledge Panel is the proximity to the user's location. So this goes out to those mobile devices, tablets and phones. If somebody is driving through your town, searching for places to stay, and they're close to your location, so say they type in something like bed and breakfast near me, and they're in New Orleans, and they're close to O'Malley House, O'Malley House is going to tend to rank higher for them because Google knows that they're close to that location, and that's what their search phrase is. So that's an important piece too. Google My Business maintenance is very, very important. So if you are not going into Google My Business, which is google.com/business, and updating and making sure that your Google My Business listing is completely up to date, has current photos, has current information, you're really missing an opportunity to promote your business in Google Local and in your knowledge panel. You really want to make sure that people have the right information. I can give you a really good example. We have a client that used to have a pool, and all the directories everywhere, it said she had a pool. Well, she has closed the pool and is not going to offer that anymore. And I believe at some point it may even be filled in. So her very important job at that point was to go directly into Google and delete all references to that pool. And then she had to go to every other directory and find anything that listed that she had a pool and get it removed, because it obviously gives very bad information to somebody who's looking for information about your business. If it says you have a pool and I'm like, wow, I really want to go swimming, I want to stay at this place that has a pool, and then I show up and there's no pool, that's terrible user experience from Google's standpoint and from yours. You don't want to have somebody that's disappointed from the minute they show up at your place. So make sure that you are maintaining your Google My Business account and getting everything working correctly. Another thing that affects where you show up here is personalization, and that is through Google. So if you're logged into your Google account, if you are, if you've searched for a specific in before, if you've been to that website, if you've looked at it multiple times, Google knows that you like that site, you're interested in that site, so they will boost that site up in the rankings a little bit. All right, now let's talk about Google Organic, or as it's sometimes called, local organic. These are the listings that show up underneath the local listings and underneath the ads, and sometimes above the ads if there are ads at the bottom of the page. If you have super competitive area, you're going to see ads at the top, bottom, and then even pages after page 1. So these are based on your website. As you see here, these listings, we have TripAdvisor, Hudson Valley Lodging, bedandbreakfast.com. If you look at these listings here, so TripAdvisor, Hudson Valley Lodging, bedandbreakfast.com, those are all based on your website ranking. So obviously, if a website is extremely authoritative, if it is very large and well-known business, it's most likely going to rank higher than an individual in listing. And as we can see, we see that here. So the search phrase is Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast. The first listing is TripAdvisor. It's a huge site. It's highly authoritative. Then we have Hudson Valley Lodging, which is an individual listing site for the actual Bed and Breakfast Association in Hudson Valley. And then we have Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast for bedandbreakfast.com. Again, a very highly authoritative site. And then we have Travel and Leisure, and finally an individual in listing, which is Caldwell House Bed and Breakfast. So very, very much based on your website. And the rank is impacted by various things, including your authority. So again, a very authoritative website is going to rank higher than another website. Social media presence impacts this slightly. It's not a huge factor, but you should be, if you are using social media, and we think you should be, you need to make sure that you're being very consistent with it. So don't set up a Facebook page, put a couple pictures up, post a, hey, this is our new Facebook page, and then never post to it again. Or maybe post to it once every 6 months and then post a year later. Be very consistent with your posting. It does have an effect on your ranking. Inbound links are huge. Inbound links are basically how Google works. Google gives authority to sites based on the number of inbound links that they have from quality sites. It used to be inbound links from any site. So we saw a lot of bad SEO link scheming back in the old days, where people were just buying links from all these different sites that had nothing to do with their own business. But now Google knows the difference between a bad site and a good site, and they want to see quality inbound links from authoritative sources. Citations are also important. A citation can be a link, or it can just be a mention on the internet. So for example, mentions in large publications like the New York Times, Washington Post, Travel and Leisure, Sunset, those kind of relevant listings like that. On-page SEO, this is huge to where you show up here. You can see here, this blue line is usually going to be the title tag on the home page of the website. So not always, sometimes Google will substitute its own wording there, but you can see here Caldwell House is listed as Caldwell House Bed and Breakfast, Hudson River Valley, New York. So the search phrase is Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast, and we've got Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast right in that title tag. And then of course TripAdvisor says Hudson River Valley Bed and Breakfasts, and then ends in the Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfasts. So on-page SEO is really important. That your title tag, your description, and usually Google is going to use the description that you have in your code on your site, but eventually, again, they sometimes will use their own wording if your wording is not that great. But you can see here these highlighted words: bed and breakfast, B&B, Hudson Valley, B&Bs, bed and breakfast. They pay attention to that information. And then another part of the on-page SEO is the linking from one page to another in your website. So on-page SEO is very, very important when it comes to Google Organic, because again, it's your website. But personalization also affects this. So again, if you have used, if you've looked at the site many times, you're going to have, it's going to boost it in Google's eyes. So say I keep looking at Caldwell House over and over again. I'm interested, but I'm not ready to, pull the trigger and make a reservation, but I keep coming back to them. Maybe I've gone and looked at their Facebook page and then I've clicked through to their website. I've looked at some pages. I've even maybe checked the reservations link. Google will know, because I'm signed into Google, that I am interested in that site, and they will boost it higher in the rankings. So personalization absolutely does affect what you see in Google Organic, unless you're starting out with a cleaned and cleared, cached, and cookies page in Google. Schema is code on your website. It's often found in the footer of your site. It will sort of surround your name, address, phone number, your lat long, your date range, image. There's all kinds of information that you can give to search engines with your schema. A big part of that is telling them that you are a lodging, you are a bed and breakfast, you're a local business, that kind of information. It helps Google very easily, and Yahoo and Bing, gather information about your business in how to present your information out there. So if you have, I am a bed and breakfast, I'm in Hudson Valley, this is my lat long to show you that I'm in Hudson Valley, this is my phone number, it has a local area code, which again, I just want to throw out a tip for everybody. Use your local area code when you are listing yourself with Google. Don't use your 800 number, your toll-free number at all. Use your local phone number in all your Google dealings. That's just a tip for you. But schema is really important to give information to search engines about your business. Page speed and usability is affected or affects Google Organic quite a bit. Google wants to know that if they serve someone your website as a result to the query that they have typed into Google or spoken into Google, that your site will be easy for them to use. As we're going to see as we go along, mobile devices are being used more and more and more all the time. It is super important that your site works well on mobile devices. We've all tried to load, websites on our phones that were slow and loaded very slowly and had pop-ups and things like that. And so you try to click somewhere on the page and then it loads a second later and you end up clicking something that you don't want to click, and it's so annoying. And you're just like, I can't deal with this website. I'm getting off of it. Well, if your website performs like that when somebody's trying to get information about you, Google knows that, because they have algorithms to test your speed and usability without even a human being having to do it. So that's super important. Content, very, very important. Your website needs to convey everything about you that somebody might want to find out on Google. So you've got to have content on your pages written about your business. It can't just be beautiful photos, although eye candy is super important. We know that. You want to see pretty pictures, obviously. You want to see something that accurately represents the business, but your content is also important. So you need to talk about why you're a great choice if you're a Hudson Valley bed and breakfast. What do you offer? You want to talk about area attractions. You want to let people know what's going on in the area and what's available. Whoops, sounds like, I don't know, I think somebody's not muted. Let me see here. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so another huge impact there is going to be HTTPS. That means that your site is on a secure server. So when you are, looking at your website up in the browser bar, you're going to see HTTPS:// and then your website address. Excuse me, if you don't have your site on a secure server, you really should do that. Not even you should, you need to do that. It's super, super important to have a secure website. For a while there, Google was threatening that your website wasn't even going to appear in Google rankings at all on Chrome if you weren't on a secure server, or there would be a warning saying this site is not secure. Nobody wants to click on a listing and get a warning pop up saying this site is not secure, or there's a problem with the site. obviously that's going to be a huge problem. So make sure that your site is on a secure server. And then of course, back to page speed and usability, mobile responsiveness or mobile friendliness is super, super important. You really want to make sure that your website works well on a mobile device because people are using them more and more and more. All right, so toward the end of 2016, we did a study to see what the breakdown was of traffic coming to your site from Google Organic or, you know, those listings that we just looked at based on your website versus local travel, which is the 4-pack again, the local pack. We wanted to see what's the difference in traffic. At that time, so this is 4 years ago, 75% of traffic was coming from Google Organic. So that's the listings that we just looked at that are based on your website. And 25% was coming from the 4-pack or Google My Business, Google Travel. So the vast majority, 3/4 of traffic was coming in from organic. Now we've been tracking this since 2018 and we have seen a very large shift in that breakdown. Now, at this time, so since 2018, 50% of traffic is coming from Google Organic and 50% of traffic is coming in from Google Local. This is a huge, important thing that you need to know because you need to know where you're putting your time and resources into creating more traffic to your website. This is an enormous piece of information, and we only expect that this is going to start to skew towards local as time goes on because it is a significant shift, and it's a good reminder to pay attention to your Google My Local or Google My Business, your local listing. As I said, everything needs to be correct in that Google My Business listing. I mean, starting from your name all the way through the pictures that you post. It all needs to be accurate and consistent and correct. We found out, and it seems, when I say it, it seems like, well, you know, of course, but when you really are thinking about how people are searching in Google, where you are found is extremely affected by whether somebody is searching for your name or by a keyword phrase. So let's get a little deeper into that. Of the people that came to and in through the organic listing, which is that long list of websites that's based on, you know, your website, 25.7 used a keyword search query. So that's something like Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast. Oops, let me move my mouse there. And 74.3% used some variation of the inn's name. So those are people that already know about you. They know that you exist. They have become familiar with you somehow, whether it's because they've stayed with you before, or they have heard about you from a directory, or they've just gotten information about you somewhere else. Maybe you sent a newsletter out and they got that and they came and searched for you. Almost 75% of the people who were finding you on Google Organic are searching for your name. If they are searching for a search phrase like Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast or Santa Fe Bed and Breakfast or something like that, 62% used a keyword search query and 38% used some variation of the inn's name. So if they're looking for you by your name, they're going to click through on your organic listing. So when I say came to the website, I mean they clicked on your listing and that's how they found you. And this is all through Google Analytics data. If they come in through the local panel, they are searching for a lodging in your area. They are not looking for your name. This is huge. It's almost completely opposite. So what does that tell us? It tells us that a guest who is looking for you specifically by name is more likely to find you via Google Organic. And if they're not sure where they want to stay yet, not meaning the area that they want to stay, but the actual place that they want to stay, they are more likely to find you through Google Local. The reason for this is manifold, but setup is much easier. So if I go into Google My Business, or sorry, if I say I search for Santa Fe Bed and Breakfast, Google Local pops up right there near the top of the page under the ads. I can easily compare multiple properties at the same time. I can put in my date range and it's automatically going to eliminate anybody who has no availability for that time period. I can tell them how much money I want to spend on a night or, my stay. If I want a place that is a luxury lodging, I can choose that. If I only want to stay at places who have 4 stars or more, I can tell it that. It's super easy to compare multiple properties at the same time. And of course, eye candy is really important. Those listings have photos. For a very, very short time, we saw that where Google was testing a small little photo in organic listings. Didn't last long. I think it was too much competition for their paid, the Google local listings or travel listings where Google is being paid by OTAs and through Google Hotel ads to list you. So no more photos there. But we do see photos in Google Local. And it is eye candy. People love to see pictures. So it draws the eye and it gets people to look at that. And Google has pushed down, as we saw, individual in listings in the organic listings for keyword queries, while business name queries still enjoy high placement on page 1. So when we saw that listing that said Hudson Valley Bed and Breakfast, it was TripAdvisor, directory listing, bedandbreakfast.com, et cetera, until we finally got to an individual in listing. If I had searched for the in by name, it would have come up at the top of the page, most likely. Every now and then, a website for a business is just a bad website. It doesn't have good information on it. It doesn't have schema. It doesn't work well on mobile devices, all the myriad things that we talked about before. So Google will say, well, you know what? I can give better information about this business from this directory than from the website. So that tells you, again, another reason why it's super important to make sure that your website works and is beautiful and gives great information about your business, because you ultimately want to be the person telling your potential guests about you. You don't want to have to rely on what other sources say. So what should you do? Because the split of traffic is about half and half when it comes to Google Organic and Google Local, it's important to pay attention to both of them. And knowing that the majority, again, 75% or almost 75% of people are going to look at your listing on Google Local and they are not sure where they are going to stay, it is very, very important that you put your best foot forward and that you stand out from that crowd of other sites or other inns. Let's see. So even though most of the traffic coming to you through Google Organic is looking for you specifically, there are always opportunities to reach people who are unsure of who they want to stay with. Again, those are the people who know they want to stay, in Asheville, but they don't know exactly where they want to stay yet. That is why it is super important to make sure that you have all of the best practices mentioned all through this webinar that we've done so far, this session, in place, as well as creating new content that can reach additional audiences through blog posts. For example, that is a way to reach people for non-lodging related terms. Those are those more, say, events, area attraction type listings people are looking for, because sometimes people want to stay with you. They want to stay in your area, but they're coming because of an event or because of an attraction. So if you're talking about that through your blog posts or your events and attractions pages on your site, it is a good way to kind of catch the attention of people who are coming to your area for a specific event or attraction. So use your blog posts. And it also is helpful for those long tail search terms. And when I say long tail, I mean like Asheville Bed and Breakfast near Montford Historic District, for example. And long tail searches are becoming more prevalent because people are using voice search. So people are using much more natural language. So think about that when you're writing your blog posts. So to maximize your Google My Business listing, which again, that's that 75% of people that are going to find you through searching for lodgings in your area, the number one thing you need to do is make sure your Google My Business listing is up to date. Have as many quality professional photos as possible. And let me tell you something, because I've heard this more than once. I've heard it way too many times, as a matter of fact. I have had people tell me, I'm not going to use my good pictures on Google My Business. I'm going to save those for my website. I don't want Google to have my beautiful photos. I paid a lot of money for those. Those are only going to be on my website, and people are going to see them there, and I'm not going to share them. But think about that. If 75% of your traffic is going to come in through Google My Business, you need to put those beautiful photos on Google My Business. This isn't a matter of, saving your pictures for your website. But I mean, I get how you would feel that way. I totally understand it. But they're not even going to see your website if they don't find you through Google Local. If somebody else has their pretty professional photos up there that, display their in beautifully, and all you have are cell phone photos that you took, or you've relied on other people uploading photos that from when they've stayed with you, you're just not going to look as good. So don't feel like you need to save your pretty pictures for your website. Of course you're going to use them on your website, but you're going to use them on Google My Business as well. You want to make sure that you are constantly monitoring and responding to your reviews, and knowing that Google pulls in reviews from other sources beyond the Google native reviews. You'll want to make sure that you are always keeping up with where people are reviewing you, and that you are giving good responses to them. So if somebody gives you a bad review, take a deep breath, step back, and say, how can I respond to this? Not even necessarily for the person that left me the bad review, but for the people who will come later and see that review. I need to respond in a way that will show other people that this was an unfortunate situation, or respond in a way that will show people that this person has a major issue and it's not, indicative of my usual level of service. So breathe and then write out your response, wait a little bit, and come back and read it. And if you can even ask somebody who's not, not a part of your business, say a friend or somebody like that, read this and tell me what you think. And if they say, you come across really angry there, then rewrite your response. So monitor your reviews. Another thing that can happen, especially if you're in an area where there are businesses that have a close name to you, sometimes people will leave reviews for you that are actually on your listing that are actually for another business. We had a situation up in Cape Cod where one of our clients had a very similar name to a really nasty rundown roadside motel that had all kinds of problems, and they would get reviews left on their listing for this terrible motel. And so that was something that they had to do, was go out there and say, you know what, unfortunately, I think you've left your review on the wrong listing. We don't have the, it doesn't appear that you've ever stayed with us. We don't have this thing, whatever it was, swimming pool, window air conditioners. We believe that you're actually leaving a review for this other business. So you really need to keep an eye on it, because wouldn't it be terrible if somebody wrote a really terrible review about another business, accidentally put it on your listing, and then the next person to come along said, ooh, I don't want to risk staying at this place because it has, bad reviews. So monitor and respond to your reviews, not just on Google, but everywhere that anybody reviews you. You want to constantly check and update the attributes in your Google My Business listing. So depending on what categories you use in Google My Business, of course, most of the people that are going to be in the ALP development day today are going to be bed and breakfasts and inns. But you also might be vacation rentals, you might have cabins, you might have cottages. There are different categories that you can choose. And depending on what business categories you choose, Google will allow you to pick from different attributes. And they are added to all the time. So like one really big thing, especially in a city area, would be parking. Do you have on-street parking? Do you have lot parking? Is it free? Is it paid? Wi-Fi? Do you allow pets? Do you have a pool? Do you have a fitness center? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they keep adding to that list of attributes. So make sure that you are updating that fairly often. I encourage people to look at their Google My Business listing at the very least once a month. You know, I would love it if everybody looked at it at least once a week. But if you can make a date with yourself on your calendar to get into your Google My Business listing and make sure everything's right and make sure your attributes are updated and make sure that your reviews are answered if you have bad reviews, or even, if you can throw out a nice thing about somebody. I mean, people stay at bed and breakfast because they want that personal touch. I'll read reviews where people say, you know what, I never even saw the owner and I felt like they didn't care about me. This is why I stay at a bed and breakfast. And of course, in our times of COVID now, we do have to worry about, maybe people don't want to see us, but on a regular basis, people want to see the innkeeper. So make sure that if somebody says, gosh, we had a great time on our honeymoon, you might want to say something like, oh, it was so great to have you here on your honeymoon. We appreciated this. And if you can throw in a little personal thing too, that's always nice. And it tells people, again, the people that are going to see this review later, that you care and that you're a nice innkeeper and you want to have your guests feeling very comfortable with you. A very, very important thing is to make sure your pricing is feeding correctly through, whether it's an OTA or Google Hotel Ads, so that you show up well when you do have availability. It would be terrible if your rates were listed incorrectly and somebody tried to book with you and it turned out the rates were just totally wrong. Or if your dates were wrong, if your feed just wasn't up to date for whatever reason and it showed that you did not have availability when you really did, or vice versa. And then finally, make sure that you are monitoring your knowledge panel Q&As. So if you're not familiar with what that is, as you are scrolling down your knowledge panel, which is that information that comes up on the right side of the page when you search your name. So if you've never done that, go search your own name, find your knowledge panel, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see the Q&As. And this is where people can come in and ask questions about the property. And anybody can answer those questions as long as they're logged into Google. So you want to make sure that you are answering those questions and giving accurate information, because any Tom, Dick, or Harry could answer a question and they may be right and they may be wrong. So make sure that you're updating those questions. You also can type in questions about your business and answer them yourself. There is nothing wrong with doing that. It is a great way to kind of make a list of questions based on the questions that you get often from potential guests, maybe through email, on the phone, or if you use a texting app like Whistle or something like that. Make a list of those questions and then go out and put them into your Q&A, because people don't really want to call you. They don't really want to have to bother you. They just want to get an answer to their question. So if they can do it quickly and easily through the Google Knowledge Panel Q&A, that is a great way to do that. All right, so that's our session for today. We have a couple of minutes for questions, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to give those to us. We've got myself and Pam here to answer your questions. We do want to make one note. When you're looking at your analytics for the last 6 months, obviously, COVID has really impacted travel and lodging. I think that probably travel and lodging has got to be one of the most highly impacted business categories, period. We just, we've been hit really hard. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your analytics, that historically your information is probably going to be different. In analytics, you can set your date ranges. So maybe set it year over year to see what it has looked like for 2017, 2018, 2019, and then 2020. So do we have any questions? And I hope that I will do this right in case anybody has any questions. I'm more used to GoToMeeting than Zoom. All right, we'll just wait our few more minutes here and see if we have any questions. Pam, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I mean, I think everything was covered really thoroughly. And just to reiterate the point that we definitely made and already covered is just the importance of the Google My Business listing and making sure that's up to date because of that shift of people using that as a way to figure out where they're going to stay. And if I could put 5 exclamation points behind what Annie said, as far as photos on there go, because not only, I mean, you want to make sure that you're putting your good quality photos up there, but other people can add photos to your listing. And so you want to have an opportunity at the very least for them to see, you know, if you can sort of flood the top of your listing with your good quality photos. If other people put photos up there that are, you know, that they're just snapping a picture and like, oh, this is fun because this is where I stayed, you know, here's the breakfast plate, but they're not going to go through the effort to make sure that the lighting is exactly what it needs to, you know, all those kinds of things that you would want. So you want to have the most say in the visual picture of your business that's going out there. So definitely put your best quality photos on there. And, you know, the iPhones, the newer phones and all of that, they take great pictures too. So it doesn't necessarily, if you right now want to add more pictures, but you can't do a professional photographer right now, go out and make sure you have good lighting and just use your phone. And typically you can get some pretty good pictures with that too. So.
All right, so Lisa's asking a question. Raise your hand and say how many people on our meeting today are surprised that local is delivering so much more traffic than organic. That's 75%. So let us know what you think about that. Are you surprised to hear that? Or did you think, yeah, you know what, that's pretty much what I thought? Okay, we've got a raised hand. Thank you, Linda. Most people are not very surprised, it looks like. You've probably seen that coming in, that you are seeing that a lot of your traffic is coming in from Google My Business. So of course, that is very, very important. And then Melinda's saying she's not surprised based on her own searches. So yeah, I mean, that's something that you can do too if you kind of want to get a feel for what that looks like. Sometimes we get in a bubble. I certainly am guilty of that. If I have been working with a specific set of clients for a certain amount of time, I can get a little bit of a tunnel vision about what you know, a specific city, for example, or an area, or kind of, you know, looking at my own information and not looking at the kind of categories at large. So maybe go out and do your own searches and, you know, search for things like another city slash, you know, if you're in California, search for someplace on the East Coast. If you're in Cape Cod, search for something in this Midwest or Southwest, and kind of get an idea of what looks good and think about how you might update your own listings to make sure that they look as good as you might think somebody else's do. It's a great way to kind of get out of your own sphere of, you know, where you're really paying attention to your own business and not kind of seeing what somebody else is doing that may be, you know, you look at it and go, wow, that's a great idea. I think I'd like to try that myself. All right. So we only have a few more minutes. Let's see here. And then a reminder to everybody, you need to be using your Google Analytics to validate and gain insight regarding organic versus local, so you can continually, excuse me, adjust your marketing plan, which is a great point. gosh, you guys, if you're not using analytics, get out there and get that set up and use it. Your webmaster can help you set it up, no matter who it is. It's important that you get analytics set up and working, especially with e-commerce. And I'm kind of shocked at how often we, especially when we go to conferences and things, we'll run into innkeepers who either have never looked at analytics or have it set up. They've got an account, but they haven't connected things correctly. There's not a link between their website and their reservation system so that they can get conversion information. It's so important, and it helps you make decisions about how you want to allocate your resources. Really important. Make sure that you've got that set up, that it's working, and that you can see your information. And it really helps to know, I mean, of course, that caveat with this year being so crazy, to know kind of year over year, season over season, where your traffic is coming in and where you need to spend money or, put more time. So super important. All right. We have just another couple of minutes, so we will just wait to see if anybody else has any questions. While we're waiting, I hope that you got some good enjoyment out of this webinar, out of this session. It's a very different way to do things than we normally do. It's very interesting. It's kind of weird for me to be sitting here kind of talking to myself and not seeing all your faces out there. I love to kind of see how people are reacting to my information, but you know what? We've got to do what we got to do. We got to make changes to fit our situation. So that's what we're doing. And I would like to thank ALP for doing this, for giving us all a chance to kind of get together and talk about what we need to talk about, even though we can't meet in person. So thank you, everybody.